The siren of science.
That was more declarative that time. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, Siren.
Can you hear me okay?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no, you can't because your mic isn't on. What a cruel joke.
See, if I have to do two things I can almost do. Once I have to throw that third one in there, I'm really in bad shape.
Talk a little more now.
This is like an AT&T commercial.
Oh, this is weird. No, I love this. This is really good radio, I think.
I could use this mic.
Yeah, I want you to do that.
Oh, yeah, and, okay, anyway, but go ahead.
I'll
Try-
just use this mic.
Yeah,
How's that?
excellent.
Okay, then. Hello, everybody.
Greetings.
Later, you'll be sharing a mic, but it is with your husband, so I think
So one more time.
that's
Yeah,
good.
that's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he's going to do it
No,
again.
okay.
No.
we don't need that.
We've heard it 4 times now today, and that's really enough. Okay. So,
Well,
what have you
hello
got
there.
for us today?
Well, I have some exciting news, I
Oh.
think. Some new energy advancements that I just read about that I think are very hopeful for the new year.
Excellent.
And for the future. There's been a new breakthrough in the making of biofuel out of algae.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Favorite subject, one of them.
Oh,
Really?
good. Here we go.
I've never heard you discuss this.
We talked about it on the air
that's
about
true.
the German.
Okay, favorite. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, you've probably heard about other kinds of alternative fuels like ethanol that's made from corn and biodiesel that's frequently made from soybean oil. But there's been a lot of drawbacks with them, and it really hasn't taken off. Just a small percentage of our fuel comes from ethanol and biodiesel, despite all kinds of government subsidies. Most of the problems, I think, are that it takes up too much land to grow the soybeans, and it also artificially inflates the prices of the food sources. So a lot of people eat soybeans and corn. So that's been a lot of the critics have said that this is not going to be a fuel that can replace our current petroleum.
Wait, but explain that to me because I'm confused. Like, of course, yes, if you found a new use for one of those substances that would produce fuel, it would inflate the price. But why would that necessarily be a bad thing?
Well, if you're a country like Mexico that eats corn, and we're artificially inflating the price of corn because we're using it for our fuel tanks.
Thank you.
Then they can't make corn tortillas very
got it.
inexpensively.
I will not stand for that.
Yeah. That's been a problem, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But anyway, it turns out that the most promising biofuel likely to replace petroleum comes from an unlikely place, pond scum.
Wow. You mean some of my old boyfriends? But seriously,
Well,
folks.
anyway.
Oh,
wait a minute.
no, that's not
Sorry,
right.
wrong one.
Pond scum, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, yeah.
No, it turns out that making fuel out of algae, even though it sounds like science fiction, it's actually been the goal of a lot of scientists. And there's been a new breakthrough in the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories, which is actually part of the Department of Energy, believe it or not. They've come up with a new way to convert algae into a bio-crude oil. And people have been working on using algae to make biodiesel for quite a while. Actually, it dates back to the 70s when we were in our big energy crisis and people were lining up at the gas stations depending on your license plate. But then, when that crisis went away, then the research sort of died down. But there has been a renewed interest in using algae for biofuel. But it just takes too long. It's too much energy. It's been expensive to grow the algae on a large scale. But this new breakthrough, they've come up with a process that basically replicates nature. Here we are back to biomimicry.
Love that. Love that we come back to that.
Yeah, so normally what happens is the plants decompose and they are under the earth and they're under enormous pressure and temperature for millions of years and it turns into crude oil. Well, they've discovered a way to accelerate that process into 1 hour.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they feed algae stock into this continuous reactor and it's at a high temperature and a high pressure. And they basically just condense it and they decompose it just like what would happen in nature. And out the end of this process comes this thick crude, this green goo that's like the consistency of crude oil, but it's made from algae. And then they can further refine it into a liquid that's similar to gasoline with that consistency, and they can actually burn it in a gasoline engine or a diesel engine.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And
That's incredible.
It's really amazing.
So what happens now from that to that happening? I mean, is it all about the commercial aspects that bring it out, or is what you're reading something where they have just now found it, and that's not to say that it's already, that they've just now had that breakthrough, so it's pretty far from something we could use.
Yeah, well, scientists have been working on this algae biodiesel for quite a while, but as I said, the process was the limitation. And now that they've kind of cracked the code of the process, now the next step is to scale it up to make it commercially viable. And they have applied for patents, of course, and licensed this technology to a startup company in Utah. And it's called Biofuel, I think, if anybody wants to buy some stock.
Now the process from
Biofuel Corporation in Utah.
Biofuel.
Now, we're not
Jennifer,
asking
GEN.
you on the air to buy stock. No, we're not.
No. I'm kidding. It's a startup, so who knows? High risk.
The process. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
The process to get it from the crude to the refined state, is it something that they're doing naturally without chemicals, or is that going to be still tied to some sort of chemical?
Well, I think
treatment?
they have to add some chemicals, but essentially it's the temperature and the pressure that's basically crushing the algae. Algae actually it's a great plant material for an oil-based fuel because it is such a oil-rich. The cell structure is a very oil-rich. If you think about like corn, other cellulosic materials. There's our word for this week.
Oh, there's our challenge to the other guys at 5. Cellulosic. Add it in a sentence and let us know if you do. Thank you very much.
So algae, it has a simple cell structure. It's very oil rich, and it grows very fast. So whereas when you're trying to take sugar cane, for instance, to make ethanol, there's a lot of it's shreds, it's cellulose in there, and,
Gotcha.
and you don't produce as much oil per weight
Right.
of material as you do with algae, and it grows faster. There's a lot of advantages. It can be grown in salt water, which is a big advantage.
Wow, that's huge.
This is another criticism of other biofuels, is that you need fresh water to grow soybeans or to grow corn or sugarcane. And you're also...
Pond scum does not require that.
Pond scum is pretty flexible, really.
Wow.
It can be grown in a lot of habitats. It can be grown on the desert where you couldn't grow anything else. So all those miles and miles of Arizona desert where nothing is growing in there, you could have systems growing algae in the sun with saltwater tanks.
Wow.
Gee, where would we find all that salt water? I'm just kidding.
Wow, honey. Thanks for that.
Oh,
Okay.
come on.
The other thing is that it's more space efficient when it's growing. So you can have these enclosed spaces. You don't have to have it outside in fields and use tractors. And so it's actually an amazing advance. It doesn't compete with food supplies. And the other thing is, when it comes out as this bio crude, it's similar enough to petroleum that they're saying it can be existing facilities that refine crude oil could be used to refine bio crude oil. So you wouldn't have to build brand new facilities. It's not brand new technology. The first part is brand new. And then some interesting things is that since they absorb carbon dioxide like all plants, some people have been putting them in smokestack emissions from power plants. So the algae is actually eating up the carbon dioxide emissions from the smokestacks of a power plant.
Wow.
Does that change the energy aspect of it, or is it's?
Well, I think it makes the process more efficient and hence cost effective, hopefully. But yeah, so the smokestack emissions are diverted directly into ponds of algae, and
Wow.
they're feeding the algae at the same time as keeping the
Wow,
CO2
that's cool.
out of the atmosphere.
You know what? I'd
Jeez.
like to ask James about that. Pity he's not around anywhere, but maybe when he comes on for the next segment, I'll ask him. But, you know, it's one thing to give something like this to a small company, and then don't they spend like the entire rest of their life fighting the oil companies for you know, I mean...
Well, interestingly, I read a thing where ExxonMobil has invested in algae technology.
there you go. That's
Yeah.
what it
They've
is.
actually spent a lot of money looking into it.
Oh, that's
They
good.
don't have this technology, though.
Yeah.
They actually were looking to create a synthetic algae using bioengineering technology. So they wanted to control everything. They didn't want, you know, a natural
even want
substance.
real algae.
That's right. They probably wanted to patent the synthetic algae and control all aspects of the process.
Shoot.
But at least they are recognizing that this is the you know, this is one of the this is the wave of the future.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention this.
Yeah, please.
So the things about soybean biodiesel, just how much land would it take if we were to replace all of the diesel that we use in the United States? How much soybeans would we need to grow? And the Department of Energy actually said that it would take half the land mass of the entire United States to grow all the soybeans required to replace all of the diesel that we use.
Woo!
Wow.
Now, maybe James has some different statistics on that.
Oh, we'll ask him when we see him.
But then, on the other hand, you could replace all of the petroleum, gasoline, and diesel with algae grown on a land mass equal to the size of Maryland. Now,
Wow.
that's still a big, land
Yeah.
mass, but you know, you think about there's a lot of arid, desolate land in the West.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking about. I was trying to figure it out in my head, and of course, you know, the disclaimer is that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I figure that much is pretty darn clear. But I mean, the fact that it can be so fast, the thing you were talking about how fast it can convert, would speak a lot about how much actual room you'd need, wouldn't it? I mean, because you could just continually.
Well, it's the room to grow the algae.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
the growing of the algae has been the problem. Actually,
Oh, okay.
in this, and the amount of energy it takes to convert it. But you know, they've been growing them in these open systems, open pond systems, but then it gets contaminated, or they have these closed systems, but that's very expensive to control. So that's been one of the hurdles, actually, to this whole algae thing. And then I wanted to just say, I think we were talking about this, about Rudolf Diesel, going back to the original diesel engine. And Rudolf Diesel invented this engine back in he patented it in 1898, and they showed it at a world exhibition in Paris in 1900, and it ran on peanut oil. So now I'm not sure that he intended it to do that, but it did run on peanut oil, and so people were very excited about the possibility of using it for agricultural uses, and it was very quickly adopted for trains and ships and submarines. In fact, the French fleet was converted to diesel engines, and he was on a ship going to London in 1913 to talk to the British Navy about converting the submarines to diesel engines, and he disappeared off the boat, and no one ever.
The boat showed up
Found
without
what
him on
happened.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could there have been a
They did
plank
find his-
involved? Yeah.
They did find his body floating in the English Channel.
Sleeping. with
There
the
he
fishes.
is. Yeah.
He was there, so
Uh-huh.
they don't know whether he jumped off for some unknown reason.
Yeah. It just
or,
felt like jumping off in the middle. Yeah.
But it was, you know, the diesel engine was replacing coal-fired engines at the time in these big industrial uses, and so the coal people probably weren't too happy
No
about
like
that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a
Wow.
little bit of.
There's always a coal
funny-
person in the back there somewhere, isn't there?
But what an incredible thing that it grows with salt water. That's just
Yes.
mind blowing.
And I'm wondering
Yeah.
if we have to change our whole thing because, I think I have, in disliking someone at some time might have called them pond scum. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but
It could
now I
become a
think you'll-
compliment.
That's what I mean. You're going to have to turn around and go, look at that babe, man. She is pond scum.
That's some righteous scum there. Wow.
Okay, well, that's great news.
Yeah.
Yay! Are you going to Siren of Science? Are you going to stay for the next segment?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, let's go to a song, but first you might want to play your thing one more time.
Oh,
This thing.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
As we bid
yes.
adieu to the Siren of Science and bring in her Siren of Science.
The Siren of Science.
Bye-bye.
She blinded me with science.